The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com. Let's see.
And good morning. Welcome to the Old School Podcast, a podcast about a host of things, whatever interest a couple of old codgers such as ourselves. And with me in that endeavor is my good friend and codger number one, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Here, Miller. It's good to see you there. You're in a different spot again. It seems like you were kicked out of your office for something you did.
Well, I'm still out of my office, but it's nothing I did. It's what the internet did not do. And so I'm hoping that this proves to be a more stable situation. So
Well, here's hoping.
I, I feel like I'm the only person that has problems with their internet.
You do all the time here, Miller. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't hear anyone else kvetching about their internet. No one else is saying, "Damn, our work meeting got dropped again because my internet's not good." No one complains about it.
No, it's always the same people. I meet with probably 20 to 25 people every week on Zoom, and
Yeah,
if you have Zoom, internet problems once, you have them every call. You're just,
every
so
time.
so you can expect them to not be hearing, and so you're just sort of guessing a lot at what people are saying. They'll freeze, and I always blame the other person for freezing, not myself. Um, and the fact that I'm doing 25 a week and nobody mentions freezing on my end, um, but a freeze is a freeze, I guess. But yeah, it's the same people all the time. So
Okay.
I would call somebody from the internet company if they have one, and have them test it out and see what your signal is.
Listen, I've had the internet people over here countless times, and every time they come here, they test it. They do the speed check thing on the internet, and they say, "Well, it's great." I said, "Well, it's not great if you keep having problems with it." I'm convinced it's some sort of conspiracy, but I
Well,
don't know.
yeah, somebody could be using your line. Some people drive by and park and they take advantage of your internet and they're streaming videos or something.
I don't need anyone surreptitiously using my internet. I got enough yahoos in this house that's doing that. I mean, so
That's probably the problem. When you do the podcast, you should say this is a no internet zone for the next 47 minutes.
or thereabouts.
Yeah, I should try that, Herr Miller. But all I do is solve problems. That's part of what I do. So
Well, here's a problem for you.
yeah,
So the other day, I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about the notion of corporal punishment. And then they segued that because everyone agreed it's horrible, although I'm not terribly in agreement, whatever. But then they talked about the idea of grounding. And they said that current psychological recommendation is that the grounding should not exceed 1 minute per year of the child, which that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
you
I mean,
5 minutes for a 5-year-old.
yeah. That
It's time
now,
up.
did you ever ground your children?
It must have happened once or twice, but it's pretty rare, and grounding usually was, giving. I mean, it's not like you lock them in a closet or something. You basically take away technology. That's their currency. I mean, they don't, kids today don't want to leave the house anyway, so that's not any punishment. But
Yeah.
it's about the only thing you have is their devices and screens, so you can ground up from screens. That's it.
Well, I think it depends on how addicted your kid is to technology, but it just seemed like 1 minute per year of child was horribly inadequate.
You would have rather have it a longer punishment. I mean, you're actually calling it a punishment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, well, sure, yeah, or at the very least, a timeout. But I mean, I think how long someone is grounded should depend more on what they did rather than how old they are.
Yeah, you
Now, at the same time, you're not going to lock a 6-year-old into their room for a week, but I mean, but still, it should be befitting of the crime, as it were.
you could make it indefinite and say as soon as you things around to my liking unexpectedly, it'll be lifted and there will be a party.
It'll come like a thief in the night. By the way, I have a very attractive tequila bottle on my shelf in my living room.
I wasn't sure where you're going with that. You have a bottle of tequila that's attractive, and so it's now part of your furniture. It's a
Yes.
okay.
So for those who don't know, because I didn't know until yesterday, and I'm not sure it's true.
I think that he kind of guilted the restaurant into giving you the bottle 'cause they didn't seem like used to ring the bell or anything.
But the two of us were at a restaurant that had a lovely bar, and you and I were drinking tequila. And the tequila that we started out with was Azul.
Also,
And it
yes.
Azul, yes. And it has a very fancy schmancy bottle. And when we were getting ready to order the drink, some random guy next to us told us that with regards to Casa Azul, that if you get the last shot out of the bottle, then you get to keep the bottle. And the bartender, either through acquiescing to this guy's ludicrous suggestion or being knowledgeable of the practice itself, gave me the bottle for having taken the last shot.
Like the ceramic thing, so it's not like a glass bottle. It's really beautiful, very tall, beautiful pattern on it.
Yes.
But the waiter was kind also because, I was telling me later that that was essentially 2 shots. It was a very, very strong shot to finish it off the bottle there.
Yes.
Yeah, so it
That
was
was a lot for me.
yeah, so they could have gone by the book and said, "Well, technically, but then you would have just purchased the last one." Yeah. But yeah, so now you're displaying it proudly.
Sure. I mean, because from outward appearances, it does not look like a statue to depravity
No, no.
and drunkenness, but rather it's a classy symbol of I don't know, experiences.
And your good taste because by all accounts, it was pretty good. So
It
do you
was pretty
plan
good.
to add to that now? Now you're gonna get a companion piece that's just the same, and maybe get a trilogy, a triptych of those.
Well, first of all, we're not even sure that was for real. I
Uh,
like you said,
well,
I think the
I've
guy just
heard
guilt
that
tripped
kind of thing.
the bartender to do it.
Yeah, no, I've
You
heard
have?
I've heard that before. Usually out very, very late. Once anybody mentions the top shelf, you really need to look up high to see it, and you see these ceramic things. At least for the tequila, you don't do that. You don't get ceramic whiskey, but for tequila,
Scotch bottles.
yeah, you'll see that. So apparently, that has to do with the quality, and usually they're right. But those waiters, if it's a Mexican restaurant, particularly, and they will give you a nod when you get the good stuff. So yeah, it's good. But he mentioned another tequila, what I had, which we both agreed was actually even better tasting.
And I had that one as well, the Don Julio of
Uh,
1942.
So the 1942 was Don Julio 1942.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that was
And so I looked it up, by the way, I looked it up. Those 2 tequilas run about 160, 170 bucks a bottle.
okay.
So there you go.
There you go. Well,
So
you
for
should.
all you out there in the listening audience who favors tequila, those 2 are not that bad. So,
Yeah, it's a good way to. And we had a nice meal. I was out of town, which is kind of the topic of our show. And coming back to Texas, what do? You sit up at a bar and have enchiladas and
yeah,
drink.
why would you?
Yeah, what better homecoming? That was a great evening.
So you spent 4 days, was it 4 days,
Yeah.
in a town that you have never been to before. It is the largest city in the United States by population, 8 point some odd million people within its 5 boroughs. Um, you were at New York City.
I was there, and it's shocking to have not been there for a lifetime, basically. I've been in a lot of major cities. I mean, you name them, certainly all the other US cities, except for Baltimore, Washington, D.C. So that's kind of it. But I mean, I've been to, a lot of places in Europe, Melbourne, um,
Yes.
Hanover, or where, all the major cities in Germany, Berlin, Munich,
You
um,
been to Budapest?
Budapest, Hungary, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, and Austria, to Salzburg, Vienna. We went to, well, I guess the closest big, well-known city visited was St. Moritz, but that, near up in the Italian Swiss Alps there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been a lot of places, and it would be hard to pick U.S. cities, the big ones I haven't visited or spent a lot of time in, like Chicago, for example. But yeah, New York, it's just
Sure.
been this mythic idea that I never had the opportunity, and I never thought just how easy it is just to hop a plane and get a Lyft or an Uber anywhere there. Uh, you know, not a bad flight, very easy.
So, based on the fact that you had 60 years to ruminate over how great or how ridiculous New York City would be,
Yeah.
what was your preconceptions before going?
Well, I knew there were different areas, and some of it was, um, full of people, lots of cars honking, and uh, cab drivers who always knew what's going on. And, a lot of construction guys walking around. And, I pictured that. I didn't expect the cabs to be Toyota Siennas and Toyota, RAV4s. Toyota is made a contract, I think, with New York. So, but it's sort of gentrified, very nice. So I was thinking it would be a little bit rougher, a lot more homeless people around, and people just misbehaving, just kind of drawing attention to themselves. But I mean, I was on subways, everything, walked all over Manhattan, every place except for maybe the very tip, by the World Trade Center. Didn't do that. I didn't go to Statue of Liberty, but basically everything else. But yeah, I had a feeling it would be rougher, more difficult to get around, bigger. It's actually relatively small. That sort of surprised me. But yeah, I was expecting a little edgier experience.
So, my first experience, I was 8 years old, I think. This is like the mid 70s.
Uh-huh.
And New York City at that time was a little bit more like what you would see in Kojak, the kind of
Okay.
the gritty, grimy, yeah, gritty, grimy type of New York, Barney Miller kind of
Yeah.
facade, as it were. But I remember one of the very first experiences I had coming out of a subway station, a subway, yeah, subway station, and that we saw a guy. I was with my mom, my dad, and my two sisters, and we had just walked out up to street level. And one of the first things we saw, I mean, I'm talking about in a matter of minutes, we saw a guy run out of a liquor store and get shot in the back for trying to steal something out of the liquor store. And then the idea, first of all, my sainted mother was horrified
Yeah.
that she had just subjected her children to such an experience. For me, it was certainly wasn't cool or anything, but it was just shocking. I mean, just the kind of stuff you see on TV and in movies, but you don't necessarily see it in real life.
Was there like a
Now, I
ball,
will say that,
the bald detective come with his notebook and
yeah.
you know,
What'd you see, kid?
just,
I said, "Oh, no, it was I saw this guy run out of the liquor store." No,
uh,
but I mean, I think, and to be fair, after that, it was a fairly sedate experience, although it's kinda hard to top seeing someone get shot, but at the same time, it was a fairly nice experience, but it certainly was grimier and a little bit rougher around the edges. And, it's a interesting city, and as much as I hate their sports teams, and I am, you know geographically determined to dislike all their sports teams because of my favorite sports teams.
Yeah.
The city itself is pretty cool. So I'm wondering for you, what was the coolest part about it?
Well, we were in Midtown, yeah, Manhattan, and so that's a very wealthy area, very much basically Broadway. So you have the lights and all of that, and but I was just impressed by just how close. I mean, if you want to walk around, do a bar crawl or a restaurant crawl, there's just so many options, just right there, right there, right there, and everything is good. Food is just top notch everywhere. The service. But then, I had a chance a couple days ago with a buddy of mine who's an actor in New York. Um, to get on a subway. So we walked the city. We went by Lincoln Center and saw where Juilliard School of Music. So these are just names to me, and suddenly they become places. I saw NYU, but we went to Greenwich Village, which is where NYU is, and you just get off the subway, you come up onto the street, and it's like a whole different world. It's
Mhm.
very, very quiet, the trees and the parks, and sort of Bob Dylan hung out, and you still see these kind of this sort of bohemian, the parks and people hanging out there, and lots of pot. The smell is everywhere. It's legal, and it's just it's so casual there. But I mean, I know the smell growing up in Oregon, but I've never seen it or smelled it at that, just constant. Where we are, somebody's smoking pot, and so
Right.
that kind of surprised me. But just that it's just a beautiful the different sections. You don't need to walk that far, and your whole different reality. We my friend lives right by the Empire State Building. So if you imagine you look up and there's that building, you get on his roof and you can see the whole skyline right in the middle of it. But then we just walked for a little bit and he said, "Oh, there's Madison Square Garden." And so after the basketball games, that area is just insane. Go about a block. And we said, "Well, let's have some Korean food." And that's what his doorman suggested. And I said, "Yeah, yeah, do it." And so we turned, and then there was a group of Koreans. I thought, okay, this is just funny, but it was just literally full of Korean people and Korean restaurants. And when we went into this packed place with about six different, noodle type restaurants, and you sit in the middle someplace, and it was beautiful. So just incredible variety in a relatively small space. And then you may walk for a little bit and you're, at the kind of square where it's just this rush of people. You can barely get through anywhere. Or you slip into a bar, or maybe an old bar that's, again, packed. So if you get
Right.
at that table, you're lucky. You have to squeeze past the bar, but the service is incredible. Very fast. They, you know, and people, as you would appreciate, are direct. So when you order breakfast, you need to speak up and tell them exactly
Yes.
what you want, and they'll say, "Got it," and they always have it. So
Mhm.
there's this assumption that everybody's smart, and I like that. So they're not doing that. We had a podcast episode of kind of a ageism where they refer, to older people as we. How are we doing today? None of that in New York. They're just it's get right to it, and we say what we need to clearly, and then we move on. But they know what they're doing there. Well,
Well, it is a beautiful city, and part of it has to do with the fact of its neighborhoods. I mean, many of the large Northeast cities have these kind of things. I mean, there's some cities beyond the Northeast that have it. Chicago had it for the longest time. A lot of stuff is starting to become gentrified, and therefore neighborhoods are starting to kind of meld together. So it's not quite as distinctive as it used to be.
Right.
But in New York City, I mean, you could still go to Astoria and see and find Greek food,
Right.
or Chelsea and find Greek food. There's different places where you can go to find the food, and it's not just the food, because if it was just the food, it'd be like a lot of other places
Right.
where it's kind of like this faux Koreatown or this faux Chinatown kind of a thing. But rather, you do have these rather distinctive places, and it speaks more to immigration patterns, and it's the reason why Boston has that strong North End Italian district. That's why, Baltimore had, for a long time, like, east of the downtown, it was the Jewish section. That's where it's called Corned Beef Row,
Mm.
because you had all the corned beef and delis that inhabited both sides of the street. And so these were kind of typical of the patterns. Now, interestingly enough, though, is that New York didn't start out that way. New York was actually the kind of the crown jewel of Dutch Western Hemisphere colonialism. In general, it was called New Netherlands, but New York itself was referred to as New Amsterdam. When you go to New York City today, you can still see and still recognize a lot of the places, usually through place names that tie back to the first Dutch settlement. Places like Hellgate,
Mhm.
places like Brooklyn. These are kind of remnants of that Dutch. Harlem is the same thing. These are all Dutch cities, Dutch towns. They now become parts of the city itself. The city itself is made up of 5 boroughs. For those of you, I'm sure most of you all know this. Manhattan, that's where New York County is. And then you have Brooklyn, which is Kings County. Then you have Queens, which is Queens County. The Bronx is Bronx County. And then Staten Island, which is to the south, southwest of the city, southwest of Manhattan. That's Richmond County. Then you go to the east and you have this is not one of the 5 boroughs, but you have Nassau County, and that's where Long Island is located.
Okay.
And so all these places are names that people are quite familiar with, but it's not something that maybe people think about in totality. And then you think about the idea of the Dutch. For the longest time, the Dutch only allowed the Dutch in that territory. And and that's why it's part of the reason why Dutch influence stayed around as long as it did. In the early 1800s, there was a movement of guys dressed a particular way, and they called themselves the Knickerbockers because they had these short pants that kind of got tucked in at the knee, and then they had these socks that went down the rest of the way. This was kind of like a Dutch gentleman style. And of course, Knickerbocker is where we get the abbreviation for the Knicks, the New York Knicks, the basketball team. But for the longest time, I mean, that influence stayed put, and then it wasn't until the 1800s, the mid 1800s, where you start to see a lot of the materialization of these neighborhoods
Mhm.
that makes it kind of fun. It's one of the reasons why it's fun to visit New York.
Right. Um, and it's a place where people walk all the time. And that's
Yes,
something, living in suburbia, if you take a walk, maybe, but you're not like walking purposefully from one place to another. People walk quickly, or they just hang out. But the weather is so important. I mean, they're in the elements. And so we had
yes,
a humid day, very hot. We had a little chilly, rainy day. We had a perfect day. And so it just depends, but it's rough. When you get, I can imagine in August when it's hot and humid. I mean, the train stations, the subways are not all beautifully air conditioned. And so I think
never.
that's when people get a little jumpy when the weather gets hot. And then the winters, you have like a wind tunnel between those buildings and a lot of shade. And so
Right.
so it really is colder there than the weather report would indicate, just because of the wind going through those buildings. So that's got to be really harsh. But at the same time, just like in Europe, when the sun is out, people are outside. They're not going to stay home.
Mm. So you're talking a little bit about the things that you loved being there,
Mhm.
and perhaps this is too small of a sample size to adequately answer. But was there anything there that you saw that you wished we had in Texas?
In Texas, well, the public transportation obviously would be brilliant if we're set up that way. We're not. I mean, way too spread out.
Right,
It wouldn't make much sense. But I love the way that the subway is out of the way. I mean, you just go to these stairways that go down, and then there's a whole different world. It's very
right,
easy to get on a subway. You don't have to look at this chart like you do in Germany and pick tickets or whatever.
right,
Um, you just put your card on the thing, and you have like 2 hours essentially of going where you want. So it couldn't be easier getting on and off. But something like that would be great. And then the fact that everything is right there, and it makes sense. I mean, you have these theaters, and then you have restaurants, and then you have bars, and then you have all of these options. But the transportation, and then you have the buses, and I guess You have the avenues, which is the direction of the subways, and then the streets going across. That's where you
Mm.
would use buses to get around. So between all that and the fact that the city is on a grid and it makes sense, you really can't get lost there. I mean, you have these
Not
tall
really, no.
buildings looking down at you, and so you have to really lose your mind to not know where you are there with all those landmarks.
There is a kind of a claustrophobic feeling that may will sometimes disorient people because, if you're used to and I had you compare New York City with Texas, but really,
Yeah,
if you're talking about mass transit, there's a lot of places in the United States that does not have
right,
what New York has or has what Boston has or,
right,
whatever the case may be. And so, I mean, that's something you could apply, across the board to a lot of places,
exactly.
um but it is kind of fascinating, when you try to compare the 2, that claustrophobic feel can sometimes cause directional problems because, typically, if you're in a place like, let's say, Fort Worth or Dallas, you can see, like, for example, Reunion Tower from pretty far away
Yeah,
in any part of the city, and so all you gotta do is spot that, and then that kinda orients yourself, but in New York City, because the buildings tower over you like redwoods, it does create some confusion, I think, for some people. But then you're right, you just go down the stairs into the subway, then bam, bam, you pick the right rail, the right line, and you're where you wanna be.
I was surprised that I didn't feel I mean, I don't like crowds typically. I've talked about that.
Yes.
I don't like heights. All of these things that I experienced there didn't seem to matter. I think if you're, drinking beer and other things all day, it helps. You kind of meld into it. And I know I had a real good day on one of the days of the trip, actually, where my son performed. And
Mhm.
that was quite great at Carnegie Hall. I'll say it for the world. And
Yes, say it. Say it
that's
loud, say it.
as a father, that's about as exciting a moment as you can do. And so and then going out after and celebrating. And so it's set up for that type of thing. But the crowds, as long as you can find a place, you
Right.
know, it just kind of makes sense. I guess people know what they're doing, but you can tell which places are tourists. You go to
Mhm.
Times Square, you look around, those aren't New Yorkers, none of them. Because they're standing, you can tell if they're looking up or they're just standing still. That means they're not
Yeah.
in New York. The New York people don't just go and stand there. They're
Right.
on their way to some place and they're going to go inside or do something, but not just kind of be there with their phones out, taking pictures of everything. We did, and we have great museums here, in Fort Worth, I mean, world class, but we don't have the Met, and that,
Sure.
and just the building and just the scope of what they have. I did kind of I didn't want to look at the map before. I mean, it's clear which floor you're on and what
Sure.
period and so forth, but you walk in and you're looking at these paintings, and I know a lot about art history, apparently a ton, because all these paintings, I already knew who painted them and had seen them or I'd had prints on my wall or studied them in college, but one after the other. So you look about, take about 10 steps and you're seeing this, at least in your mind, a masterpiece that you've known about,
Yeah.
famous. And it could be just tucked away, without a big crowd around it. But so that's the kind of place where, yeah, you could see going back, you get kind of drawn to those spaces, and they have different spaces, around Lincoln Center, which is where some of the great musicians in the world have studied, Juilliard, and then they have the opera and everything is right there, the dance. Um,
Mm.
so there's nothing that approaches that, I think, anywhere in the United States that has that type of a artistic scene and just the quality of everything because the competition is, I mean, I learned that restaurants go out of business all the time.
Right.
You have to really be good to make it there and to stay.
But I heard if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
I thought about it and let's it seems like I was saying something else that was a little silly, but I couldn't remember now. But it's nice, staying in a centralized hotel where
Right.
so I'm not gonna. pay exorbitant amount of money for breakfast in the hotel or coffee. You walk across the street to a joint, a diner, bagel place, whatever, and you grab something and you bring it back. So there's a
You
lot of
can pay exorbitant prices there. So
well, it's not as bad, but a real simple experience that I recommend. First of all, I love the idea of a slice of pizza.
sure,
Like it's a great thing. You wait in line, you eat, but the pizza itself, I still think is better when you get it in a box. It's not
sure,
reheat,
yeah.
and yeah, and their pizza is great. I mean, I don't need to say that. That's not news to anybody, but they have special water that's different than anywhere, so the crust is a little bit different. It's beautiful. But if you're at around when the sun's starting to go down and you have a box of pizza that you're bringing up to your hotel and you're walking around New York carrying a pizza box about to go inside your that's a good feeling. You feel like, okay, it's warm pizza. You're walking down and feeling that's a good experience. And so
Now
I
I
recommend that.
now I recommended to you to go to Lombardi's
Yeah,
Pizza, and you went to Ray's, and so those two represent like the big argument.
yeah,
And I will tell you, I've had both,
yeah.
and I couldn't tell you really what the difference is. They're both great pizzas. So you cannot go wrong going to either one of those places. But that kind of represent to let you know how seriously New Yorkers take their pizza
Yeah.
and perhaps hammer home the point how Chicago pizza really isn't pizza at all.
Oh,
But the idea is the degree to which that they will argue and discuss and talk about it, and the way that they dismiss Chicago pizza, Detroit pizza, any pizza with bleeping pineapple on it, you can tell the seriousness in which they take their pizza, and, that's kind of a fun discussion to be a part of as well.
well, I want to go back because you did make me a list of it. You took care of doing it, and you mentioned a bagel place. It was Daughters and some
Russ and Daughters.
Us and Dogs, yeah. That was one, but they all, so I think that there's a lot of places, that I want to see, but the pizza, I don't want to disparage Chicago pizza, and you can call it pie, you can call it deep dish, but it's great.
On a
Whatever it is, it's
casserole is
great.
what it's a casserole is what it is, so
Whatever it is, it's a great food item, and
it tastes good, yes.
you eat it with a knife and fork. You're not going to pick up a slice of that and eat it that way. So call it whatever, but it's great. And they also make bar pie in a thin crust in Chicago, which is really really
Mhm.
good. So yeah, I think that the argument about Chicago deep dish pizza, forget it. Don't call it pizza. Just eat the damn thing. It's really good.
Just eat it. Yeah, it's tasty, and so but you can't but s when you get thrust into the pizza debate,
Yeah,
all sorts of things get roped into the discussion,
for food.
including
No, I agree with you.
yes.
It's a different, but it's great, and you can't get it anywhere as good as Chicago. Now I had a hot dog off one of the stands, and it was okay. It didn't change my world, whereas the Chicago dog did. Um, I think that the hot dog culture may be a little bit better in Chicago than New York. That's my experience.
Well, I would suggest to you that, 1, the
Yeah.
place that we went to in Chicago, assuming that you're talking about that experience, we went to a kind of a brick and mortar place. It was a hot dog restaurant,
Yes.
whereas you went to basically some yahoo pulling wieners out of this box with water in it and
That's what
slapping
it
them with
was. So it wasn't great. So it wasn't fair. I should have gone to a hot dog joint. That's what they do.
yeah. The problem is I always kind of liken the stuff on the street with, like, the stuff at the ballpark, the kinda hot dog you spend a buck for at Dollar Hot Dog Night. I mean, that automatically should tell you that that's probably not the hot dog you should partake in.
But the experience is better than the food. I mean, just
When you combine the ex
yeah.
yeah.
So I almost went to a Yankees game. I had time on Wednesday night, but I just didn't have my sea legs yet. I was a little tired, from the travel, and my son did. So he took a picture and so yeah, he went. That would have been fun. I think, yeah, I probably would have enjoyed that. And I definitely would have sent a picture to you because you would have been surprised by it.
Would we? Yes.
That was the only reason I was going to do it. I thought Ross would like this, and I'm going to get a hot dog there. And they have like beers that are double size. It's
Yeah.
called a big something. I don't know what it is, but that makes sense because it takes a lot of time to get in line and get, so you get but a beer and a hot dog at Yankee Stadium. I think I would have gotten a nod from you at least a little bit of okay.
Well, it does suggest that time has passed because the Steve Bourgeois that I know would not have shrank from the experience. I think you would have powered through. You would have gone to Yankee Stadium. You would have experienced it. But we all get a little older. We slow down a little bit. We need a little bit more rest. We don't recover. We don't bounce back like we used to. So,
I'm in my prime here, Miller. My wandering, little bar hopping went a total of 9 hours. I finished at 2:30 in the morning. Just walk back to the hotel, and so I figure I can hold up pretty well. Even in my prime, that would have been impressive.
let me tell you something. The
Yeah.
only way I make it to 2:30 in the morning is if I have a nap that day.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell I can make it to 2:30. I can't do it.
Well, it's doing it professionally. I mean, you manage. You don't. We're not trying to drink our way around. I mean, you balance it. Just a little bit of happy feeling, a little bit of food, not too much food. That's a amateur move. If you're trying to
Yeah,
do that and too much food, then you lose your kind of your flow state at that point.
sure. So there's an old axiom for most people who do not live in New York City
Yeah.
that New York City is a great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. Now, I know, again, your sample size is small, but was there any part of your experience that you could sit back now and reflect and say to yourself, if I was confronted with this on a regular basis, it would do me in, or yeah, I couldn't handle it. I wouldn't want to have to deal with it.
So my buddy there had a studio apartment, rent control, everything you need, meaning
Right.
great setup, never get rid of it. It was remarkably quiet. It was probably around the 30th floor or something, but you couldn't hear street noise. It was quiet, a
Right.
sanctuary, incredible views, close to everything. I just wouldn't go out much. When the weather's harsh, I'm uncomfortable in one room, just staying there for days. You know, I got along famously during COVID. You just staying inside. So go out when you want, but so I think I could do it, by myself. I wouldn't. I don't. It doesn't feel like a great place to raise a family, particularly if you worry, and I do worry. I think that's the way that we are in the world. Our way of being is worrying, and it's never going to change. So I wouldn't want to raise kids and send them loose on the subway or whatever. But as an individual, or just as a place that you jump off and do travel, I could see it happening, but at the same time, getting back here, you have everything slows down a lot. You have all this, this open space, and you have Mexican food, you have friends, and whereas in New York, there are all these anonymous people, and you're one of them, and so that part there's sort of a anonymity, in a way, loneliness. It's sort of odd to think to be around all those people, but the crowd that's out there all the time, I think it would take some time to make sense of that, and I'm not one to just strike up conversations, but so I would say in general, it wouldn't be my first choice, but it's the closest thing I've seen to Europe, and Europe has that vibe, where people are close to each
Right.
other.
When I think about New York City and you talk about the isolation part of it, I am kind of reminded of, and I know I've talked about this before, but I always get drawn to Edward Hopper's paintings. He had a painting, a very famous painting called Nighthawks, and people have turned that into all sorts of things and filled in different people.
That are familiar. What was it called?
It's called Nighthawks. It's his most famous
Nighthawks.
painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's basically it's just a diner scene and a guy at the counter and this couple, what have you. But he also did a great painting called Hotel Lobby, where basically it's these three people inhabiting the same place, but no one's really connected to anybody else.
Oh, I can see it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of his paintings focused on people amongst other people, but still horribly alone or terribly alone or what have you.
Mhm.
And there it is an element of that existence that has been talked about, written about, painted about
Mhm.
for centuries.
Yeah.
You know,
So
and so
this existential experience. There's another one called Dogs Playing Poker. Where you see dogs. Same period. I mean,
you're ridiculous. Edward Hopper did not do dogs playing poker. Jerk.
well,
Don't minimize the great American painter,
no,
Edward Hopper.
I'm looking at it right here. Um, Boy, yeah, that's so. The other place would be Philadelphia, just to have cheesesteak, and that might be something to do down the road.
The thing I worry about though
Yeah.
is that I made you several recommendations. Now, unfortunately, my bagel recommendation was a place that has since closed. It's been closed for about a decade
Oh,
or so.
really?
And so I was kind of forced to, I just thought about the most well thought of bagel joint. That's Russ and Daughters, although, it is expensive, but it does taste good. But you did not take any of my recommendations, as you said,
Yeah.
which you don't have to. There's too much great food in New York City to just settle on a handful of picked places, you know. And so my concern would be is that if I don't go to Philly with you,
Yeah.
you're going to end up at either Pat or Gino's
Oh, yeah,
for
Geno's.
cheesesteak.
Yeah,
No, no, no. That's
they're
where
right
tourists
across the
go.
street from each other.
That's where tourists go.
I
No,
like
you
that.
don't.
What's that? The cheese whiz.
You're okay. All right. This, dear listener, is called yanking someone's chain.
Oh. No, I would probably rather be in Philly with you, just like Baltimore, and I think we can announce that we're going there together. Can we say that?
We are going to Baltimore together, and so we could have an episode from Baltimore.
Oh, that would be it. We were going to go to Indy, but we thought that this would probably be a better use of our time. The little
Indy's still Indy's still on the back burner. I
right.
mean, it's still on a burner, but it's on the back burner right now.
Well, because we're kind of like going to see the Ravens and the Steelers at the last game of the season. That's not bad, and it'll be cold, wet, uncomfortable, maybe a little snow, and
It'll
that'll be
be.
in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about Baltimore now after watching The Wire. I know all the.
Okay. In case you missed the last example of yanking someone's chain, you just saw another example.
It's a great show in a great city. And
It's fine. It is a great city. Do we have our problems? Sure. But who doesn't? Okay?
there's a lot of
There's
corrupt.
no u- there's no utopia out there. You know how I know that?
Yeah,
Because utopia comes from the Greek meaning no place. Okay? And so there is no place that's devoid of problems, devoid of crime, devoid of misery. We all got it. So you just got to kind of, take in stock the contextual evidence as to how great a city is.
that's where you got your attitude. You're kind of like a New Yorker and an Easterner, and you'll say, "What are you going to do?"
You know what I mean?
And if you're at a funeral, you say, "Well, at least they didn't suffer."
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Oh,
He's almighty. Well, as much as I make fun of New York City, it's a fantastic town, and I'm so happy that you had a chance to finally, after 60 plus years on this planet, you finally deigned to visit the Big Apple.
it's exciting, and I'll be back hopefully soon. because now I know it's not just an idea, but it's a place. And that makes a big difference.
Okay, here's a great closing question for you.
Oh,
Best song about New York City?
well, in
It,
Sinatra,
it, it could be
obviously.
it could be about New York City in general, or it could be about a place in New York City.
Oh, anything in there.
Yeah.
There's a line of Bob Dylan where he said, "I'm going back to New York City. I do believe I've had enough." And that would be number one. I think about that almost every day. I'm going back to New York City. I do believe I've had enough. Uh,
I like New York Groove by Ace Frehley. That's probably the first song outside of New York,
oh,
Sinatra or MacArthur Park or something like that. But
oh,
I
MacArthur
think,
Park is right up there for me too.
yeah. But I would say Ace Frehley's New York Groove is perhaps one of the great songs about that city. So,
What about scenes from an Italian restaurant, Billy Joel?
well, you can't knock that. I mean, you can't knock that. You can't knock. There's a couple other songs that when I think about New York City, I think about it. So scenes from Italian restaurant. A bottle of red, a bottle of white, whatever kind of mood you're in tonight.
Oh my God.
Or New York State of Mind, if you want
Yeah.
to stick with Billy Joel.
No, he
So,
kind of captured it. Yeah, good. I mean, the timing was perfect because we had an occasion to get there. But I know people there, and
right.
what the heck? But I would like to hit all those places with you. We should do a East Coast tour. I don't think we just go to Philly. Maybe we combine New York and Philly, make it a food tour.
Well, no, if we're going to do it, let's do it right.
Yeah, food and
Let's do
baseball.
DC, Baltimore, Philly, New
Yeah,
York, and Boston.
I love Boston. I could live in Boston. I think
You think so?
it's the most European city we have. I mean, it's high end, gorgeous, and it has just a cool attitude. I went to the Boston Symphony, and it was great because everybody goes. They're not all dressed in tuxes. The locals
Right.
go there. They appreciate. They're loud. I like the feeling there.
Okay. Well, Chris, thank you so much for listening to this little trip down memory lane a
Yes.
couple of days ago for Dr. Bourgeois in New York City. We wish you the very best and hope to hope that you hear us again soon. We've been kind of spotty of late with
Oh,
our episodes, but
we're back. What are you gonna say?
we're back. So, all right. With that, I shall say adieu, Herr Dr. Bourgeois.
Auf Wiedersehen, Herr Miller.